phases of the throwing motion. Wind up, which is the point where they come to set, to the point where their legs at that max position of flexion. Then it goes to stride, which is again that leg up position to foot contact. Then cocking phase is when that foot contact to max external rotation. Acceleration is from that maxi R to ball release. Deceleration is ball release to max IR. And then follow through is that max IR all the way to the end of the motion. So if we're going to start looking at some of the throwing mechanics components of our rehab, we know that the biggest two areas that are going to cause pain are going to be that deceleration from that ball release to max IR and the cocking phase, which is that max external rotation phase, because that's what's going to put most of the stress on the elbow and shoulder, both in eccentric and concentric movements. So knowing that somebody says my pain is at that cocking phase, the first thing I'm going to look at is kind of what is that anterior shoulder stability? What is their external rotation, motion, strength, stability? So a lot of my focus on my exam is going to go up into that 90-90 position. Now, if they're telling me it's ball release, I'm going to start looking at more of the posterior shoulder and that arm out in front. So again, what are our eccentric components of the elbow, the shoulder, the thorax, and how are those all things working together? So those are the two biggest phases that we're going to start to think about when we're thinking of rehab. Now, when we start thinking about the throwing mechanics component of it, there's a point of no return. Basically, at stride, whenever that foot hits the ground, the body's going to do what it's going to do. So there's not much I can do to change anything from then to the end of the throw. What we can start to do is to tweak some of those things at the beginning, especially in our windup and then again in that stride phase. So we know such thing as their arm position, meaning arm adduction, external rotation, elbow flexion, all plays a part in what that looks like down the road. The other things we're going to look at is what does their stride look like? What is their core positioning? All of those things, again, play in how that arm is positioned down the road and can take away risk and add risk as we go. And just a minor tweak of one thing can actually lead to a whole different looking throwing mechanics and again, decreasing risk for that patient. So I want everybody to think about the throwing motion. First of all, it's not just the arm, it's not just the elbow, and it's not just the shoulder. We have to look at that summation principle, meaning everything works together. So most of our force starts with that push-off from that stance leg in the back. What it's going to do is we're going to transfer weight to that front leg, which becomes a brake. From there, it starts a whole rotation movement, which happens just like to see in your golf swing and in your baseball swing and again in your throwing motion. So that summation principle says that if I start my motion here with my feet and I go directly into my hips, directly into my core, directly into my thoracic spine, and then my shoulder and elbow and hand, you're going to get the most bang for your buck at that point. Now, if you have poor timing between all of those because of poor positioning or just poor muscle activation, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have breaks or too big of crossovers in that spot. And then you're going to start having to use your arm and elbow a lot more to get the speed and velocity that you want. So the big things that we're going to look at, break down each one of those positions and what we can do to fix, or let's say tweak, fix is not the correct term, what we can do to tweak their motion to help give them the best chance of staying on the field and staying healthy and not coming back to see us. Because my famous line, it's not famous yet, let's hope it turns famous, is we loved having you, but don't come back. Because the big thing is once I'm done with them, I don't want to see them again unless it's for a traumatic injury, again, not what we want to do. But we don't want to see them back, and I say, unless you need us. So the big thing is, nice having you, don't come back.